Okay, is that my introduction music? I tell you, it's not going away. Well, that's good. That sounds well. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Gibson. Back. Okay, where am I going? And then we have some background, and I'm not sure how that's going. But anyway, I hope you're all well today. It's 5 p.m. Saturday, Eastern Standard Time. Welcome to our event. Proximity predators today is what we're looking at. And we're going to talk about it extensively. I'm going to wait for a few more of you to join. If you're in chat right now, go ahead and chat and tell me who you are. Go ahead and let us know who you are, and then we can start getting things set up for our interview. I want to turn down the volume on this and keep us moving along. What do we have in a chat? We have one person. Just type anything, say hello. It doesn't matter, and I'll come back to you. Now we have no one in there, so I'll just sit and wait before I do anything. Are we showing any visitors on the other side, any of the other channels? Okay. Well, that's real heartening or disheartening, having zero visitors right now. It says what? Okay, well, good. I'm glad. I'm going to go ahead and start this thing because we have visitors on LinkedIn, and that's good. Well, today is our topic, proximity predators. Most people don't know what a proximity predator is just by reading the obvious words, proximity predators. But it's not what you think. It's not that of war or that of anything having to do with external aggression. As a matter of fact, it's internal aggression. And it's normally the people who are around you who actually have an important role in your life, but more importantly, they influence you or manipulate you. These people, a term that I've coined, proximity predators can be the most dangerous people, of course, to have in your midst on any level and at any rate. So today's conversation, you got to remember, this is not a tough love approach, rather a realistic and viscerally connective exercise, because sometimes the truth hurts. And one of the core tenets of norm therapy is truth. And so when we look at norm therapy, we're always talking about our CAT, our acronym: clarity, assessment, and truth. We first clarify, then we assess, and then we find truth. Not my truth or any of our norm therapists' truth, but the victim or survivor or the person being abused truth. And we help them to put that in a place where they can recall it, they can deal with it and confront it in a very strict and serious manner, and also that they can do it in an effective way without bringing that emotional content that normally comes through when you're recalling something traumatic or devastating. So let me explain to you the concept of proximity predators. Proximity predators, as these relations have been aptly termed, of course by me, recalls and represent a complex facet of human relationships. And it's complex because these people have love, hate, indifference, or other kinds of relationships already existing. These are individuals within one's inner circle who, due to their close relational or physical proximity, possess the potential to significantly impact your emotional and psychological well-being and we always take them for granted. When you're dealing with proximity predators, you have to know that when a person, let's say it's your mom or dad or cousin or someone who grew up with you, your best friend, what actually occurs is that you become so familiar with them, and we'll talk more about that later on in this hour, but you become so familiar with them that the bad things about them that they've taught you and you now practice from time to time, sometimes unwittingly or unknowingly practice it, those very things that they teach you in a subliminal or sublime manner, what happens is you pick up on those traits and those behavioral patterns, and over time, you tend to blur them out. So no longer is your best friend or your brother or your mother or father, no longer are they guilty for the same behavior that they've taught you in your head. That's really devastating because it normally causes you to overlook those very same traits and qualities in other people that come in contact with you. Let's say your dad and your brother are extreme narcissists and or narcissistic tendencies. Let's say that's the case. And then you pick up on that and you have to argue everything until you win. And you have to put people down and you have to denigrate them and you have to get your narcissistic fix. And you don't even notice you're doing it. You have no idea that this is what you do because you've already overlooked it for so long. You've been conditioned to believe that it does not exist in you or the people with whom you're speaking or knowing or in your proximity. And they become predatory. Remember, and we're going to talk about this more here shortly, but people will only ever do to you what you allow them to get away with, nothing else. If they don't think they can get away with it, they won't do it. So what do? But first, let me finish something. I want you to hear this. While some may enrich your lives with support and joy, others may exploit their closeness, and manipulate, control, or otherwise negatively influence your lives. That's their job. They get their fix off of hurting you because this has been your relationship. And maybe it isn't their fault that they're narcissistic or that they're brutal or that they're possessive when it comes to you. Maybe it's not their fault. Maybe it came from a prior relationship they had prior to your birth or prior to your getting to know them. So you all locked into a cycle of abuse with one another and you can't see why because you overlook it through them being proximity predators. And that's important that you notice that this will happen. I've written other papers on this and we'll talk about it later, but it's a very serious phenomenon. If you go to our Medium of our nonprofit, abuserefuge.org, if you go to our Medium account, you'll see that article written there. And it's quite a few on the things that we to talk about. But let's go dig a little further. Now, the goal today of this live stream is to empower the viewers in dealing with these challenging relationships. And I don't know how many I have viewers because I have several platforms going. So I'll just say it now and I'll probably repeat it sometime along this podcast. And that is this. This coming Tuesday, we'll be having a live stream on YouTube only for now. And it will be of a live patient, a norm therapy patient, where we will be going through the actual process of interviewing a norm therapy patient. And we'll go through their lives. We'll find out their problems. We'll find out how we can help them. We'll look at their stressors. We'll look at their triggers. We'll look at many other things, as well as their abuses and the people around them. And that way you'll have a fresh eye on what we're talking about because norm therapy is unique. We're an advanced interviewing process that took me almost 3 decades to develop. And it has been a labor of intensity and love in some places and sometimes in my lifetime. But I've been very careful about developing it in such a manner that it's very useful. Everyone who comes to norm therapy, for the most part, I say 99% of the people, they enjoy their experience, they understand that they've been helped, and they look forward to more. So I look forward to sharing that more with you in the future. So our goal of this live stream, let's get back to that. is to empower viewers in dealing with these challenging types of relationship, your proximity predators. And we all have them. We all have that uncle that just won't shut up and always says the nastiest things at Thanksgiving or Christmas, or he just denigrates and talks down to everybody. We all have the mom. Not every mom is this way, but in a cliche kind of manner, we all have the mom that can be narcissistic, and every boyfriend you bring home, she hates, or every girlfriend you bring home, she hates. We have the dad who's overbearing and overpowering. He doesn't care about your opinion. He doesn't listen to you. We all have that. These are proximity predators because they feed off of the misery that they provide you. They feed off of the pain because they want to put you in a certain place and keep you there. And the only way they can put you in a place and keep you there is to hurt you. Because otherwise you would just walk away from it and not, it wouldn't be a problem. It would not hurt you. But they have to get their fix. It's like a drug. They want you to know that they have control. We'll teach you in other modules and other podcasts how to relinquish their control over you. We'll talk more about that here in the future. Okay, so let's understand proximity predators. I'm going to spend about 10 minutes talking about that because I got it timed this time, so I don't go over in my podcast. But proximity predators are often not strangers. They are the faces we see at family gatherings, the voices we hear in daily conversations, the presences we feel in our living spaces. It is their familiarity and the roles they play in our lives that give them the potential to be predatory in the sense that they can take advantage of the intimacy and trust that typically comes with close relationships. Because when you have a close relationship, the closer you bring someone into you, the more you want to trust them. And trust is not given, it's earned. So you want a person to earn that trust to get close to you. But oftentimes these people don't have to earn it. They've just been with you since birth and you're just used to them being around. So they're going to be in your face whether you like it or not. This is the problem. So ask yourself this question. Why is it that sometimes the people most close to you cause you the most harm? And oftentimes you're not even aware of it. Ask yourself that question. Why is it that the people who are the closest to you cause you the most pain? First, you should always look at the idea that they don't know either. If you don't know that you've been hurt by them, maybe there's a possibility, a strong one, that they don't know either. This is not to say to forgive them and forget. It is to say explore and investigate. Why is that? Find out what that contiguous jump from you to them from them to whomever caused that pain in their life that they now extended to you. Because once you find out that relationship, you'll have an aha moment. You'll start looking at your mom and your cousin and your aunt and your grandmother and your granddad. You'll look at them differently and not in judgment, but in curiosity to say, hey, at the end of the day, I want to know why you're such a pain in my life. And you'll find out. You will find out so quickly it's not even funny. And when you do find out, you're going to have an opportunity to do something about it. Oftentimes, we don't see these things happen. We just don't. So we're going to talk more about that as we continue. So now I want to talk about the duality of familiarity. There's a duality to it. The duality of familiarity is something everyone overlooks and they wish they woulda, coulda, shoulda when something goes bad. So we're going to do a little test here, but here you go. Familiarity breeds content and contempt. The more familiar you are with someone, the more you will be content with them. You ever say, I think I'm gonna get Uncle or brother or cousin Bob a job down at the plant with me, or at the hospital working administration with me. And then they get there, and because they're familiar with you, they make you look like a fool. They do things that are not correct or are uncouth or disrespectful. Why? Because they know you. So familiarity also breeds contempt. Not only contentment, but contempt. And that's a double-edged sword. And people don't even notice. And they always wonder why, oh my God, I should have never brought this person with me. Why did I bring him into my space? And then they finally see that contempt they have for you is real. So when you're familiar with someone, you must always understand that the familiarity of that person is always double-edged. It has the opportunity to treat you well and have a great and joyous outcome, or to treat you poorly and have a terrible, terrible consequence. And you'll have to bear the brunt of both, by the way. So that's how the duality of familiarity works. It can lead to contentment or contempt. So familiarity breeds contempt. Familiarity is, of course, where your relationships can either have joy and comfort or pain. That is truly your decision. So let's talk about recognizing some signs of contempt and contentment dealing with familiarity. First, you'll always see manipulation. Manipulation is a huge part of the proximity predator's role. Their idea is to make you like them as often as they can. And if they're not trying to make you like them, they're trying to make you conform to what they want from you. So they will manipulate you all the time. So when you're not being manipulated by them, you have very little rest between their manipulations. So it's like if you keep telling somebody the same lies over and over and over again, soon enough, they'll just agree with you. Even if they don't agree, they'll just let it happen because of the familiarity. The more familiar you become, the more susceptible you become to their signs and their techniques. So when you're dealing with predatory predators, you have to be careful. So manipulation is one, control, sexual advancements. How many women out there have been raped by their cousin or beat up by their uncle and raped or fondled with as a little boy by the priest or the pastor or some adult? How many of you out there like that? This happens. Familiarity, predatory predators. Proximity predators. That's what it's all about. And you have to be careful. And your parents need to know what a proximity predator is as well. And you as parents, or someday to be parent, have to know as well, because we can't just entrust our children and other family members to people we don't know who may have different proclivities and different ideas and agendas. Anyway, I want to talk about your intuition about it. Now, also, not just sexual advancement. Let's go one further. Exploitation and negative influence is another thing proximity predators will do. They'll make sure they exploit you in every circumstances in which you're involved with them. They will make sure you're that. So when you come up for air after you've been so traumatized by the proximity predator, you won't know any difference, because their whole idea is to exploit you and create negative influence as a result of you. Now, it's important to recognize these signs. So how do you do that? First, trust your gut instincts. Trust those standing hairs on the back of your neck. Trust those goosebumps on your arm, when something's wrong. Don't continually ignore them, because when you do that, all you're doing is giving yourself another opportunity to be traumatized or hurt by your proximity predators. We'll talk about standing up to them later on in this narrative, but I want you to understand, when those things happen, that's your amygdala, your prefrontal cortex, your frontal lobes, and your brain housing group saying something is wrong. Your amygdala is your threat center. It's telling you there's an imminent threat. But what happens now, we've been taught in the past few decades of our existence, is that instead of using our amygdala as a warning or a caution, like the red, yellow, and green light you stop in traffic, to say, hey, hold on, there's a problem. Red light, stop. Green light, deal with it. Yellow light, be cautious. Instead of using it this manner, we use it now to determine whether we are a coward or brave. And most people by nature are taught to be coward since birth. You're taught to fear things, don't hit back, don't stand up for yourself, let the bully hit you and take your money. You're taught to be quiet when something happens to you. And then all of a sudden, when you do speak about it, people won't believe you. They'll look at you with a face of incredulity because they think that you should have told them when it happened, when you've been taught since birth not to tell them. You know the whole thing, boo. And the baby goes, ah. From birth, we're taught to be cowards instead of dealing with that. Anyway, so when you trust your gut instincts and you know something wrong, do something about it. And we'll talk more about that here shortly. This is a process for most and not always an accurate litmus test. Because sometimes people are just, you know, scared of everything. They're afraid of everything. So you can't really use this as a litmus test for all people because we don't know the difference between when something is right or something's wrong. Some people are just cowardly about everything. And we teach people how to develop courage at norm therapy. And we've been very successful doing that without becoming a bully or being a person who have to overspeak you or beat you up. We taught people how to stand up for themselves without being rude. We'll talk more about that in the future, I hope, as well. So if you are a coward by nature, all of your interactions will feel the same. And you must clearly understand that not everyone is a proximity predator. Your mom may demand things of you. She may not like the choices of your boyfriend, and she may not even care about your taste in clothing. But she may not be your proximity predator if you're afraid of everything. Once you can define what your fears are in life and what they're not, then it's easy for you to define who are the proximity predators around you, because you will not be able to discern without some level of understanding of what fear is all about. So anyway, I always try to tell a story about fear, but I really can't think of one on my own. So I'm going to talk to you about real quick about some people I know that are my patients. I never mention names or any circumstance where you can discern anything, but you need to know everything that comes out of my mouth is true. And I have a patient who's afraid that their child may have been abused by someone in their family, and they're trying to grapple with that and reckon with it. And from all the signs that I see, it's true, but it's one of her proximity predators. And to help her get to that, I can't tell her who it is. I wasn't there. But we've worked slowly over time, trying to figure out what her fear factors are in her life and trying to figure out how we can create some level of courage in her. And with that information alone, she's been more than able to start remembering things because she's no longer afraid of it. So once you know there's an abuse ongoing in your life, and this is the crazy part, I think that once you hear it, you'll understand it. And that is in every kind of abuse on the planet, it doesn't matter which one, elder, alcohol, drugs, sex trafficking, brutal beatings, physical, you name it, psychological. And every abuse, there's one underlying theme, and that's fear. Every abuse has it. You just have to find it. Once you find what the fear is, then you can start to go to work with it. But it's not an easy process for most of the abuses, especially if a person has been conditioned. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute as well. But we're making progress on that other case. So imagine a mom with 6 kids outside of a shelter looking to get in. Imagine her. She got 6 kids. It's snowing outside. It's that slush on the ground. She has 2 black eyes, broken teeth, broken ribs, and she's been victimized. And it's something that she's been dealing with for a while, obviously. At Norm Therapy and our nonprofit, Abuse Refuge Org, we help people. But if you come to me in that condition, you're not looking for counseling. You're not looking for anybody to help you in that regard. You're looking for some shelter for your children. Where are you going to sleep and eat? And how are you going to get them to school? And then what advice do you need? And what authorities need to get involved, if any? And on and on. There's so many things to grapple with. Now, I know what I'm talking about. And the reason this whole organization is here is because I was one of those 6 kids on many occasions. So I know, absolutely viscerally connected. So you have to do something with that pain. You have to learn to do something with the people around you who can hurt you the most. I won't go into too much more detail on that, but you will understand in a future podcast where all that comes from. So let's talk about the importance of what you need to do to get yourself in a place where you're in control when you're dealing with proximity predators. Recognizing them is very easily done. It's something that you can do if you practice it. It's not going to happen overnight, so don't look for overnight solutions. You have to start looking at people in a way that's objective and then sometimes subjective, depending upon the individual. If you look at people in an objective manner instead of using the idea of content and contempt as your measuring tool, look at them for in from this lens. What is useful about them in my life and what is useless about them in my life? And quickly you'll be able to delineate or figure out who in that line of abuse, possible abuse, could be affecting you and how. Because now you're no longer looking at, do I feel good or do I feel bad? As a matter of fact, at norm therapy, we teach people it doesn't matter if you feel good or bad, so long as you feel something. What matters is if that good or bad feeling is useful or useless. That is what is most important. Because once something is useful to your life, you want it more. And it makes sense to be there. When it's useless, no matter how good it feels, you don't want it because you don't need it and it will probably end up hurting you. So proximity predators create the environment where you think you need the pain that you're getting, or you need the indifference that you're getting, or you need the sarcasm or the narcissistic behavior that you're getting. They want you to believe that you deserve that. That's very important. So now let's talk about how to, you know, set boundaries. I think that's the number one thing you can do in life when it comes to any kind of predator of any kind, of any place or hierarchy in your family or friends or workplace. And that is having awareness when you're setting boundaries is very important. You must be situationally and self-aware. Self-awareness is about you and what you're about. Situation is about all the things around you and what it's about. And they are two separate things, and you don't fit naturally in any one. So you have to make yourself aware to both so you can calmly and decisively, and more importantly, clearly navigate through situations where you're trying to find out, how to set up your boundaries. When people don't have that kind of clarity and they don't know that these are two different worlds trying to come together, self-aware and situationally aware, when they don't understand that dynamic, they normally make the mistake of just letting everything in. And when it gets in, it stays. And you're the victim normally as a result. So awareness and acknowledgement. The first step to become aware are the dynamics of the relationships and to acknowledge the presence of the proximity predator. Make that list: useful, useless. Read it every day. It may take you weeks, a month for something in your head to go pop. I got, wow, this person's been telling me this is life for 20 years and I've been listening to it. But now I've looked at it and I've examined it, I've investigated it, and it's not true. It's only been here to serve them over me. You'll see that. Now there's a lot more to go with this. And at norm therapy, we would teach you that. But there's a lot more, examination and understanding to have to that in order to be effective when you're determining who your proximity predators are. This is a term that I actually came up with thinking about how do these people take control of people's lives and them not even knowing they're being abused. We've had many people say, wait a minute, financial abuse? Is that a thing? People don't even know that's a thing. And many times we've taken the opportunity to get in there and dig out and find out why they've been hurt so many times this way. And then once they realize that, they set up safeguards in their lives and they move on a whole nother path. We teach them that as well. Self-awareness, remember I said, self-awareness is important. Remember your own values and your own limits. These are your boundaries you're setting. Remember, this is about boundary setting. That's one of the most important things you'll ever do as a human. Because how can you not know your boundaries when somebody has included you in their boundary and they're taking control and hold and manipulatively holding you hostage to that relationship? How do you know your own boundaries if somebody else owned them? So you have to make your own boundaries. You have to define your own manner of taking care of yourself. and being useful to yourself and getting rid of the things in your life that's causing you pain, and that's normally the useless things. If it's useful, you keep it. If it's useless, you let it go. But you have to determine it from that. Forget the good or bad or the euphoria or the pain. Think of useful or not useful, not good or bad. That'll give you a great deal of pleasure when you find out what things in life for you are actually something you really need instead of the things that you just want. That's a whole nother podcast, needs and wants, but we'll get to that. When you enforce your boundaries, you become reliable to yourself. No one will ever treat you. No one will ever treat you any kind of way unless you let them. Remember, people only ever do to you what they think they can get away with, nothing more. So when you become reliable to yourself and you make it clear that that reliability will be a part of how you do things, once you start to change your standards, change the way you do things, change the way you operate and think as it relates to your boundaries as well as the proximity predators around you. Once you learn that and you become good at it, people will start looking at you differently. They'll start saying things like, Jim isn't the same person anymore. Or Barbara, she no longer deals with that stuff she used to deal with. She doesn't take my crap anymore. Because once you change, and listen carefully, the only way you will ever make anyone in the world change is if you change first. Once you change you and you remain reliable to yourself, to the changes you've made to ameliorate or better your life, the more you do that, the better you get at it. And once you make those kinds of changes, people will have to change in order to deal with you. That's just how it goes. So I want to go down to another topic that's very important to me, and that's communications. Having clear communications with the people that you deal with, especially your proximity predators, leaving no ambiguity or confusion in your conversations. Once you have that with them, that is a plus on your side. That's a sign of strength when you can speak your piece. Somebody told me not too long ago, someone said to me, they said, are you mad at me? I said, no. He said, well, you sound like you're mad. I said, I'm not. I'm just being emphatically clear so you're not confused about what I'm actually saying. I'm not mad at you at all. But you need to be clear. If we're going to have any kind of business or social or other kind of relationship, let's be clear. So people understand that to be something they need to rise to the challenge of. So make people rise to the challenge of being around you and not be predatory when they're with you. That's on you. Establishing boundaries is so important that you have to clearly define, and this is important, you have to clearly define what is acceptable and what is not in your relationship. Things you will put up with, things you won't. Things are not necessarily good for you, but useful for you or not. That is important. You have to do that. Once you do that and you start living by your own reliability, then you have something to work with. People will stop doing the things they do because you no longer are that person you used to be. That takes time. That's not like, okay, I'm going to decide to be someone else tomorrow and then I'm that person. You will not do well. So you have to practice and learn how. There are many different tools out there, but we're of course advocating that you come over to Norm Therapy and you can learn these things. Of course you can. We've done it for many people around the world in many different countries. So let's talk about your personal growth. When you grow personally, you set yourself up to be a stronger figure in the eyes of the people who want to be predatory with you, who want to take advantage of you or hurt you or manipulate you. Your strength is your, I don't want to say badge of honor, but it's actually an emblem that people can identify with, and they don't know. They don't know what they can get away with. And in doubt, normally people leave it alone. Most people in doubt don't go for it. A real strong person or courageous person who's just that by nature would. But most people, when they're in doubt, they don't go for it. And most people who are predatory in nature or proximity predators to you, They will 100% attempt something. But when they see it's not working for them, I think that I think what they will do, and this is very important that you understand, is that they will just back off, and you'll start seeing that where someone in the past would have said or done something that normally they're not doing now, and you'll see the difference because not that they've changed, they're still the narcissistic or sociopaths that they always been. Is that you changed, and as a result of you changing, they decided that they were going to do the same thing, just change to be able to adapt to deal with you. That's how you get them to change. So now, mindsets are very important. Where's your mind in all of this? Where is your headspace? This is so important. And are you secure in it? That's even more important. Are you secure in your own headspace? So, self care is important as we're talking about throughout this entire presentation. But you have to prioritize your well being, engage in activities that foster self esteem and personal growth. This is important. Now, these things will help you a great deal in standing up to your bullies and standing up to your predators. It just will. So, if your self esteem is low, you're going to be looking for low things in life. Your self esteem normally matches what you look for in life. So, if you want to find greater things in your life, you have to match your self esteem with what you want. The only way you can have a rise in your self esteem or increase it is to start doing it. You have to start living it and believing it. Self esteem is a very dark place to be when it's low. Because if you think poorly of you, why should anyone else think highly of you? There are many ways to get beyond that. And normally, self esteem issues come from very deep rooted and seated problems, probably from early on in your life, or probably from a current relationship that's intense and or destructive. Low self-esteem can be born just out of about anywhere, but normally the seed has been planted in you and it's just flourishing in whatever that relationship is that causes you to trauma. We can help you with that, but you have to know that that's how you're identifying with life, and that gives you greater strength in order to be stronger and more resilient. This is important. Um, so, we're going to talk about the balance of positive and negative aspects of familiarity. Now, remember, good and bad is not that important in norm therapy, but positive and negative is very important because it's not necessarily good and bad that we're talking about. Familiarity breeds contempt and contempt. We've talked about that. I'm going to remind you again, contempt and contempt. Familiarity is indeed a double-edged sword. It can lead to contentment where relationships become sources of comfort and joy. However, it can also breed contempt where the access and closeness allow for the emergence of negative traits and behaviors such as narcissism, jealousy, manipulation, exploitation, sexual misconduct. It can lead to many different things. The fine line between these outcomes often depend on the nature of the individual and the dynamics of the relationship. So whatever that nature is that you've developed with your proximity predator or the person you're considering to be that or not, the amount of that kind of familiarity will determine the outcome. I always tell people, if you put yourself in terrible circumstances, chances are something terrible is going to happen. If you put yourself in great circumstances, chances are something great's going to happen. This has been a long journey getting here to where I am with norm therapy. We're just starting our live interviews and where we're actually asking questions. And I want to know if anybody out there have any questions now about this discussion, because it wasn't always this easy. It took us 5.5 years of building this organization literally free of charge, without making any money or doing anything, just creating the credibility, creating our product sets, helping people all over the world with all of these concepts you'll see in some of these podcasts. And now we're ready to start launching the forepay phase in this upcoming year, and in some cases already, where now we can start growing our organization, raising capital, and doing those types of things. But we have the empirical data now. We have the support we need. We have the relationships in the world. We have the credibility. We have a lot of things right now that we didn't have, when we launched norm therapy to the public. So it took a while. So I'm glad you stuck around, you guys, with us. Some of you are here on different platforms. It goes to show, if you stick with something and keep going and keep changing you, as we did, we kept modifying, developing, bringing it along, making new alliances, doing all kinds of things to bring credibility and empirical data and testimonies of what we do. We did that for a while. And now we're going to our next phase. We'll talk about that soon too. But insofar as proximity predators are concerned, this will be my last live podcast when it comes to subject matter, unless we do impromptu ones from time to time. As of this upcoming Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will begin a first session with a norm therapy victim or survivor, and it will be live, and it will be raw, and it will be real. We were really doing these informational podcasts just to make sure that we had everything worked out and we had good subject matter and that it sounded great and I didn't look like a fool up here, and so that's good. Now we're going to take it to the next level. We're going to actually have an interview just like we conduct them at norm therapy. We will hold back nothing. We will ask some very serious questions. We will walk people through what their circumstances are. We'll walk through what they've been going through and how we think that their life will be affected by norm therapy. We'll talk to them about what are the possibilities and the directions we can go. And we'll talk about the raw material that will come out, and we'll expand on it, just like in any other kind of therapy. And the difference between norm therapy and traditional therapy, and I have to tell you, we deal in abuse care, not mental health. Abuse care is what we deal with. And there's a disclaimer it should be in our chat, but there's a disclaimer. And if you read the narrative, you click on that disclaimer, you go to normtherapy.com to our disclaimer, and it'll tell you right there, we're not trying to be doctors or lawyers or therapists or traditional sense licensed people. We're not trying to be anything but what we are. We're norm therapists. We actually own the name. It's trademarked to us. But we're norm therapists. And it's not my normal. It's your normal. We're helping you find your normal. Most people don't know their normal, and that's the biggest part with abuse. People don't know what normal is. How can they ever, know what it's going to be in the future if they've never known what it is? So we've been very careful about helping people find their own normal. We're interested in you having a ground zero and working your way out of the doldrums of hell, or that pit in which you found yourself in abuse. That's our main goal. So I wanted to say all that in the middle. So our disclaimer is we're not traditional therapists. We're not licensed therapists by any state, although we are looking for licensure. And we're working on an educational program with university systems in order to be a accredited semester hour program. We're definitely doing that even as we speak. We have a tremendous curriculum. Our norm therapists, matter of fact, we have 2 ongoing cohorts of norm therapists going through norm therapy training right now. And this is our 14th cohort in the last couple of years. So we've been very busy. Anyway, I'll go on more about that here later. So let's talk about that. So that jealousy, manipulation, exploitation, these outcomes of jealousy, exploitation, and all of that when it comes to proximity predators is what you really want it to be. I know it sounds kind of terrible to say it that way, but really you see it coming. You know it's wrong, but you let them do it anyway. I'm not saying it's your fault, although it is partially your fault, but it's not fully your fault. It's only your fault when you know it and you can define it and articulate it, and then you do nothing about it. Then anything after that is your fault. You can do something about it. And we'll work with you more on that in our future cast. If you listen to our live streams from now on with different victims and survivors, we'll be doing every week. a full 20 sessions or 15 to 20 sessions with each one of them. It'll be at different hours. So good luck finding us. I hope it's easier than what we think it would be. And I think that we're going to probably become somewhat of an interesting organization to watch, especially our interviews. They are dynamic. And I hold nothing back. So creating a value scale of the people around you, a value scale of the people around you. This is so important. What's so valuable about them in your life? You have to do that. And we'll talk more about that in future podcasts. We can't get everything out in 1 hour. But people around you that include their intrinsic, extrinsic, and environmental impact on their lives and how you see them intrinsically, extrinsically, environmentally. What about them internally and to you and that connective, visceral connectedness that you have? What about you and them and their external relationships that they have, extrinsic to you and in your relationship with them? And what about the environment in which you both are in? What about your situation and self-awarenesses? That is very important. That's how you come to these conclusions with people on whether they should be in your life or not. So you have to create that scale of value or value scale. Once a person has a definable value ascertained through your observations, not through what somebody else told you or how they feel about them, but through your observations and how you feel. Once you can ascertain that, you'll be better able to discern how to competently, and this is important, address and deal with the proximity predators in your life. You have to have value on each person that comes into your life. The proximity predators, they don't care about your value system until they see that you care about it. Once you care about your value system, proximity predators have no other choice than to start to care because they can't get to you the normal way they used to. They have to now get to you as that higher person you become by valuing not only yourself, but also valuing your relationship. That is one of the ways that you can, of course, prevent that emotional attachment and of course, that blinding thing that happens within proximity predators because they blind you to what's true and what's false. So, to differentiate between genuine affection and manipulative behavior is very easy. So listen up. And you already know this, but no one's ever really articulated it to you if you are going through some type of trying to figure out, do they like me or are they just using me or hurting me? You already know the answer, but no one's ever given you what? Permission to do something about it. Had your dad sat you in his knee at 7 and said, young lady, no man should ever treat you any worse than what I treat you, and I treat you well. That would have probably stuck in your brain for the rest of your life. And that would have been your standard of dealing with men, women, or whomever you deal with. It would have just been something you would never overlook because he took the time out and told you how to protect yourself, told you in no uncertain terms that he was there to protect you. And that's why he's telling you this in the first place. And that one seed planted could have prevented a life of misery and disdain and pain. So you have to start practicing distinguishing between manipulation and distinguishing between someone who's really there to help you. People who are there to help you, you know why you know how to know that they're there to help you. It's because you feel good about their help. You say to yourself, you say, wow, this is exactly what I needed in my life. And Jennifer or grandma or dad really came through for me. Wow, that feels good. When somebody's not there to be on your side and they're there to manipulate you, you don't feel good about it, but you go along with it anyway because that's all you know. Nobody ever taught you get to make a decision about that. You get to have some courage about that. You get to feel better about not dealing with those types in your life, no matter how close they are. Oftentimes I tell people when you're dealing with proximity predators, what you must do is play along. Act like you agree with them and then do what you want to do. Action speaks louder than words. So if you go through the circumstance and the process with them as if they think they're in control, which that is their whole goal in life, your proximity predators, your narcissists, and your sociopaths that are in all walks of your life. They think that that's what they get from you. Just give it to them. Just act like you go along with them, but just don't. And keep walking, keep moving, stop talking. The worst thing you can do to a proximity predator or narcissist or a sociopath is to stop talking. Just stop talking. They feed on your every word and they give you pain behind all of them. So stop talking. And that goes away almost immediately. And you'll see that you'll change because there no longer exist those triggers that normally trigger you into the type or lull you into the type of circumstance they want you to be in so they can further manipulate and control you because you changed. So you have to start practicing distinguishing between all of these. If while receiving affection, it feels perfunctory and or obligated, this is not real affection. Listening to the people around you will help you immensely in determining if they are manipulative, narcissistic, or genuine, provided they are that themselves. However, at times listening may not be enough. The best way to determine if people are good for you is tracking, investigating, and confirming their actions and not just their words. That old adage about action speaks louder than words, the veracity and authenticity will always be confirmed through their deeds. People, you should judge people on their deeds, not their misdeeds. Remember, their deeds. You have to find strength. So if I have to summarize everything for today, and we have about 9 minutes, and I think I can get through it in a couple. And that is, awareness and acknowledgement, you have to be that, especially situational and self-awareness. That is your primary reason for existing. If you're going to cognizantly exist in the world, you must be aware of the circumstances surrounding you and the circumstances you that makes you you. Remember, circumstances will always dictate the outcome of every situation. If you put yourself in great circumstances, chances are something great's going to happen. You put yourself in poor circumstances, chances are something poor is going to happen. So it's up to you. Not always, but most of the time it's up to you, unless you've been corralled into a place that you need to get yourself out of anyway. Establishing your boundaries, we discussed that. It's very important to always have boundaries and be clear about them. When a person wants you to relent or acquiesce to their needs or wants or desires, and it's a compromise of your principle or your boundaries, you just simply say no and keep moving. It's like a bully asking you for your lunch money and he takes it. You give it to him. He'll take it every day because he knows you'll give it. But the day you stand up and instead of giving him your money, you pop him in the lip. I'm not advocating violence, but as a metaphor, you just pop him in the lip. He's going to hit you. He'll probably knock you down, probably loosen a tooth. That's what he does. He's a bully. That's his nature. But I guarantee you tomorrow, when you walk through that same place, he's going to think twice about asking you for your money because he knows he's going to get popped. So he better be ready. And this is how standing up for yourself in life will cause those things that greatly hurt you to stop occurring. Now, let's talk about these self-care systems and support systems. Those are just the right people that you choose around you and how you treat yourself. We talked about that earlier. Limiting, of course, your interaction and access to people who are negative in your life. Stop. Leave them alone. You don't need them. Things you can do something about, people, do it. Things you can't, screw it. You can do something, do it. You can't, screw it. Let it go. Good people who are moving along your same path, and they may not be the best people in the world, but they're not out to get you. We have some people around us that are just terrible human beings, but they love you. Don't forget about them. They may have some stories too that can help you, but listen intently first before you open your mouth. Hear them all the way through and understand what they're trying to tell you before you use it or not, or apply it. Be a better listener than you are a talker. That'll keep your self-awareness meter, on peak all the time because you're listening and you're observing, and that will help you all the time. Now, there is therapeutic intervention in the form of norm therapy. We teach people courage. We teach you how to deal with narcissists. We teach you how to deal with sociopaths. Really, you can't really deal with a sociopath or a psychopath. You just can't. That's a mental health problem, and we'll gladly refer any of your predatory predators proximity predators to the mental health care field. And that's what we do with people we can't handle. We don't take every problem and go, oh, yeah, we can handle this, because that's what we do. No, we actually turn them over to mental health care professionals. And by the way, some of our norm therapists right now are doctors, counselors, psychotherapists, professionals from every walk of life. Right now, norm therapists must be doing something right to have people of that caliber and expertise in their own field to find this very useful and productive. And we have 1,000 or more testimonies to attest and, of course, confirm that. So therapeutic intervention is one way to get rid of your predatory predators, or at least the burden of them off of you. And that's through norm therapy. We deal with this all the time. Educational empowerment. You have to get out there and read, listen to other podcasts, listen to people talk, find out what your options are in life and kind of start weighing them. And we teach people how to do that too. Some people have never had to do that or balance a checkbook until they get married. Hey, but did your mom and dad sit you on their knee and say, hey, son, daughter, this is how you balance your checkbook, or this is what APR is versus, simple interest? You know, parents don't necessarily do some of the things that they need to do to make you a whole human being when you grow up. And you have to learn some of these things in these commonsensical ways in places where you otherwise would have just enjoyed it. And now you're having to experience it. And it may not always be a good experience. So that's one of the things you have to look at. So I want to say something. What we're about to do with these live streams, I want you all to attend. I want you to invite your friends and family. We need to support. I've been working on a budget that you can't even understand for the past 5 or 6 years, as most of us have. We have full-time, some of us have full-time jobs. We have occupations. We have done this. I don't pay salaries. Our entire organization is volunteer right now, but we're moving into the for-pay phase. And as we accumulate more resource, investors, and all of the other things that traditionally comes with this type of activity, we will begin paying salaries. We are on our way to developing. Our target is 2,500 norm therapists over the next 18 months, and then probably thereafter much larger. We already have our online school where we actually have these things taught and developed. And if you could only peek inside of one of our sessions, you would see we have the most competent professionals as a cadre, as well as a student basis. They're very smart people coming from all walks of life with all kind of disability. And so we've been very fortunate in attracting some of the best talent on the planet. I created Norm Therapy with one thing in mind. I remember as one of those children, outside of somewhere looking for something when we didn't have it. We're on the street in the cold weather or going to stay with grandma or something else. I remember as a child being beaten religiously because that's what they did to you back then. It could have made me a coward, but I think it had a different effect. I just kind of got numb to it. And that's probably why I ended up in special forces and a few other places as I grew older and became more aware of who I was. But abuse affects you in so many ways. And I can even hardly talk about it in this live session without even welling up a little bit because it's a memory. And it's clear to me, this memory. It's not something I've made up or something I have to, contrive or prop up. The truth always stands on its own, no matter what. And our job is to make sure you have your own truth. Once you know your own truth, and you'll be surprised how most people don't. Once you know your own truth, you become unstoppable, literally. And everything you touch thereafter will be looked at with a different. We teach a course at Norm Therapy called the Human Lie Detector. And everybody comes out of it saying, now I'm reading rooms. I'm catching people in lies. So again, our disclaimer is that we're not traditional therapists. But one day we will have a licensure soon. One day we will have the ability to be an accredited educational course. And we're looking at, as investors come through, institutions and other areas of business that we will adopt and bring in and superimpose over our organizations. So I look forward to that. And I wish all of you a good day. And I hope this talk about proximity predators helped. I hate just talking by myself. I love having a victim there that I can kind of chew the fat with and get them to feel and be better as a result. And remember, my job isn't to cure you. My job is only to help you find who you are so you can cure yourself. We teach people how to fish. We teach you how to help you. Thank you. I'm Michael Gibson, creator of Norm Therapy.